Shut up and sit down.
Greetings, fellow travelers. Oblix here, and today I'm with you in my Mekanism v10 test world. How's everybody doing? So guys, today we are going to be taking a look at this bad boy, the Fission Reactor. One of the biggest comments I've got on my Mekanism 10 What's New video is, how do you build this thing? So today we are going to be taking a look. Now I want to quickly tell you what this video is not. I am not going to tell you how to build the biggest, baddest, most efficient system there is. What I am going to do is I'm going to walk you through how to build it and what is required to build it, and then you can go build whatever system you want from there. You can go find the most efficient, best system there is. So this is the Fission Reactor right here in this box. One of many. It can come in a lot of different sizes, and we've got a turbine over here. This Fission Reactor is heating up water, turning it into water vapor, which is becoming steam inside, going into this turbine, spinning the turbine, which is cooling the water coming back into the Fission Reactor. That is having the byproduct of creating power, which I'm just throwing into this induction casing, or this induction matrix. You can store your power however you choose to. You can generate your power however you choose to. You don't have to just use water. You can use sodium. There are other things you can cool this thing with. We're going to talk about sodium today, or water today, because it's the easiest, most basic one. This is all the stuff you're going to need to make this thing work. It is a mid-tier energy source. You're not going to be building this on day one unless you're a crazy person. So here's all the blocks you're going to need. You're going to need some combination of these Fission Reactor casings and reactor glass. You'll need some number of each depending on how big you choose to build your Fission Reactor. You're going to need at least one fission fuel assembly, though it could be many more. You're going to need at least one control rod assembly, though it could be many more. You're going to need at least 4 Fission Reactor ports. You could use a Fission Reactor logic adapter, but it is not required. This is if you want to control your Fission Reactor turning on and turning off remotely. At least early on, you're going to need a radioactive waste barrel. Now later on in the game, you can start processing this radioactive waste into other useful things, but early on you're going to need that barrel. Now, some rules about building a reactor. First off, the reactor must have a frame of these Fission Reactor casings. It must be framed just like what you see here in front of you. Now, it can be different sizes, but it must be framed on the edges all the way around with the casings. No glass. No glass on the edges. Also, the entire bottom must be the casings. No glass in the bottom. So all the way around like a big box. So here's one with glass in it. This is a functional reactor. I don't have the ports in there. These guys aren't in here yet, but it is a functional reactor. I can right click it and get a graphical display just like you see here. Notice the entire bottom is casings, and then we have all the sides done just like that guy there. Now I want to show you, you cannot put glass on the bottom. This is not a functional reactor. I can right click it all day. I'm not going to get that gooey because of the glass on the bottom. It must be solid just like this guy. Now you don't have to put the glass on the side. All these sides could be casing. If I were to take this glass out and just replace it with casings, this would still be a fully functional reactor. You'll see it when I put the last block in. You're going to get red sparkles. That tells you that the multi-block structure is complete and it is a functional device. So all the glass can be replaced with casings. Some of the casings can be replaced with glass, though not all. All the edges must again be casings, and the entire bottom must be casing, no matter what size reactor you choose to build. Okay, this is the absolute smallest fission reactor you can build. It is 3 deep, 3 wide, and 4 tall. Now on this particular one, I've got casings all the way around and just a little bit of glass in the front. That leaves you a 1 block gap here to put your control rod assemblies, this guy, and your fuel assembly. So you can just drop those down in the middle. You must have at least one of each of the fission fuel assemblies and the control rod assembly. And they must be stacked as such. You always cap the fission fuel assembly with a control rod assembly. It must be on top. Now, you can stack the fission fuel assemblies up like this, but again, it must be capped by the control rod assembly. That has to be on top. The size you can make this depends on your casing. So in this one, you can only do, one of the fuel assemblies and one of the rod assemblies. However, this is the largest fission reactor you can make. It is 18 across, 18 deep, and 18 tall. It is massive. And I don't have anywhere near the number of rod assemblies and fuel assemblies that can possibly go in here. I have some. You can see I've got quite a few in here, but not by any means all. And you can see they are stacked almost all the way to the roof. Then I could actually stack them 1 taller if I wanted to, but I kind of like I like the look of that little gap up there at the top. But you can see this one goes all the way to the top of the casing, and if I right click it, it's a functional machine. Just like this one will be when I put this glass back. You get the red sparkles, right click it, functional machine. So you got the little baby and Big Bertha here. And each one of these will just allow you to produce more. The larger it is, the more you can produce. It kind of goes without saying, right? So here's a different style. This one is just jam-packed full of the rod assemblies and the fuel assemblies. So it is just completely jammed all the way full as it can be. If we look in here, you can see it's just jammed all the way up. But when we close it up, we get the red sparkles. We know it is a functional reactor. Now, do you have to build a cube? No, you don't. You can see here, this one is not a cube. It is shorter than it would be if it were going to be a cube, but it is a fully functional machine. You can build them long and skinny if you want. Yep, fully functional machine. You see right here, all the way down. Kind of cool looking, actually. But also works. Can you build unusual shapes? No. They must be somewhat cubed. Again, we're playing Minecraft. Minecraft is made out of cubes, so it must be, rectangular in shape. It must look like a cube of some kind. It can be a long and skinny one, can be a short and squat one, can be a great giant big one, perfectly square, but it must be cubic in shape. No funky shapes like this. No go. Okay, let's talk about how you fuel this thing, because it does take fuel. If we right click it, this guy is running, and we're feeding it coolant, which in this case is water, and we're feeding it fissile fuel. This is what it's burning, or using, not necessarily burning. It is creating steam from that water, and we need to process that steam in some way. Here, I'm just using a turbine. The steam's coming here into the turbine. It's being processed and sent back over into the reactor as water. So you're going to need a water in of some kind to fill this thing up. You're going to need a fissile fuel in. You're going to need a steam out. You can see my steam out right there coming out. And you're going to need a coolant return line. So you're going to need at least those many plus one more, which is your waste line. So you can see here I've got all my waste lined up, the radioactive waste barrels, and they are just filling up with the waste. You'll notice there's no waste in here in the tank. This would be where the waste would show. This would be where the heated coolant would be if I had any, but I don't because it's all being processed by the turbine. Now, to make the fissile fuel, you're going to need one of these guys. This is an isotopic centrifuge. This is a new block in version 10. And you're going to have to feed this some uranium hexafluoride. Now, both of these are gases. Now, the uranium hexafluoride comes from a chemical infuser. To make the uranium hexafluoride, you're going to need uranium oxide and hydrofluoric acid. So we're going to take these one at a time. We're going to start with the uranium oxide. That's coming from this way. So we're going to step back one, and we're going to go to the chemical oxidizer. In here, we're putting yellow cake uranium. You put yellow cake uranium in a chemical oxidizer, and you get the uranium oxide. This is a physical. So you want to use your logistical transporters if you want to move it from place to place. This is a gas. Then we step back one machine. How do we make the yellow cake uranium? Use an enrichment chamber. Using a uranium ingot in an enrichment chamber, and you get the yellow cake uranium. Both of these are physical items. So use your logistical cables. How do we get the ingots? Just like you would any other ingot. We're going to put uranium ore into our energized smelter. So we come back here. We need to figure out how to make the hydrofluoric acid. So to do that, we're going to come back here to the chemical dissolution chamber. And that is using sulfuric acid and fluorite. Now this is a new material in version 10. We're going to take a look at the fluorite first. So it comes in ore form, and we're just going to dump it into an enrichment chamber. We're going to get this fluorite crystal looking thing here. It's not an ingot. So just the ore enrichment chamber, you get the fluorite crystal. That is going to dump into the chemical dissolution chamber with the sulfuric acid. How do we get the sulfuric acid? We come back to a chemical infuser, and into that we're going to put sulfur trioxide and water vapor. Let's check water vapor out first because it's the easiest. We're just going to follow this white line back, and we go into a rotary condensator. This guy takes water in and turns it into water vapor. How do we get the water? We use a pump. Mekanism electric pump. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Make sure you have a source block underneath it, and it will suck water all day long. So, how do we go? If we go back, how do we go get the sulfur trioxide? We go back to a chemical infuser, and we're going to feed it sulfur dioxide and oxygen. So let's take a look at where to get the oxygen from. Follow the blue line. Follow the yellow line that happens to be blue. We're going to go to this electrolytic separator that's kind of hiding behind that water line there. We're going to feed water in. It's going to break that down into hydrogen and oxygen. We don't need the hydrogen, so I've just got it dumping excess right here by clicking this button. I do want the oxygen, so we're just pumping the oxygen here. We're going to need it for two different machines. So we've got the oxygen. How do we make the sulfur dioxide? Well, we take a step back, and we see we're feeding sulfur dust into a chemical oxidizer. Now, how do we make the sulfur dust? This is a physical, this is a gas. So if we take a pressurized reaction chamber, feed it water, oxygen, and coal, we get out sulfur dust and hydrogen that we need to dump. We don't need the hydrogen, so you're going to have to find some way to dispose of it. There's plenty of machines and Mekanism that do need the hydrogen that can use it, so feel free to spin it off to those and dump it in there. Now you can also use gunpowder to create sulfur, but coal seems to be a little bit more easy resource to get. But no, there is an option to use gunpowder as well. If you have a good mob farm, that could work great for you. So all that together, mix all these machines together, you will get your fissile material, your fissile fuel, which will power your fission reactor. Now I'm not going to get into the turbine today. There's plenty of videos on this. This guy's been out there for a long time. Nor am I going to get into the induction matrix. I've got a whole video on that guy if you want to go watch that. But I do want to show you about the waste, because the waste is dangerous. Now this is a Mekanism teleporter. If you're not familiar, it took us about a little over 1,000 blocks away. So if you don't know this is a thing, I almost never see people use these things. They're great. See, we're back at the main area here, and poof, we're 1,000 blocks away. Now I've got a whole bunch of radioactive waste barrels sitting here, and I'm just feeding it with some creative radioactive waste. And I want to show you what the bad news is about this stuff. Even in creative, it's bad news bears. But I'm going to switch over to survival. We're going to put on our hazmat suit, because we're going to be dealing with some nasty stuff. And I'm going to show you what happens if you break one of these. You need to be very careful when you place these down. Once they have waste in them, you never want to move them again. You can see these guys are all full. Look in the bottom left corner, it shows you 100% full. Each one of them. That means they're bad news bears. Do not try and move one that is full. You must empty it first. Because if you do, bad things happen. Notice all the green sparkles around now that weren't there before. This area is now radioactive because this guy is empty. All that radioactive gas is now in the air and is trying to murder us. Now we're relatively safe in our hazmat suit, but this area is very radioactive right now. And you will see it goes a very, very, very long way. Still got the sparkles. Still dangerous. Yep, still dangerous. You guessed it. Okay, there we go. That far away. It's serious. And it will last a very long time. And like I said, it will build up and it will start causing you problems. So, if I were to take off my hazmat suit, you can see problems. Major bad, not a happy place to be. I can put my suit back on, and guess what? Doesn't help, because I'm already irradiated. So, yeah, don't do that. Make sure you empty these first. It is a gas. So just run you some gas lines off to wherever you want to move them to, set you up a brand new barrel, and move it from one place to the other. You can see I'm back over here, out of the radiated area, and still dying. Even in my radiation suit. Even not in my radiation suit. And nobody wants to try to play with all this nonsense going on. And there you go, died of radiation poisoning. So I want to show you how to use these ports right here for when you're setting up your inputs and your outputs. So we want to make sure that our configurators on items is something other than wrench. You want to shift and right click the port. And look in the bottom left corner down there, and it shows valve mode change to output waste. So that tells you that is a waste output. If I right click it again, valve mode changed to output coolant. So that's a coolant output. Click it again, input only. So anything you need to insert will be like this. So the fissile fuel or the coolant coming in, aka the water or the cool sodium, could go in through these ports. through the green. Again, the yellow is waste, the blue is output coolant, and the green is input. Let's check it out on a working reactor. So the yellow output waste, the blue output coolant, so this is steam in our case, so steam is a gas. Remember that the waste is also a gas. The greens, you can see this one's green if you look right here through the window, are inputs. So this one's taking the water back out of the turbine and feeding it back into the reactor. As well as both of these are green. You can see this one is bringing water in from the pump. In the event that this guy's not feeding us water quick enough, this also works to feed us water. But mostly he's getting it from the turbine. And this is an input for our fissile fuel coming in from our isotopic centrifuge. So make sure you have your ports set correctly between the green, the blue, and the yellow, depending on what you're trying to do. Also make sure you're using the correct pipes. Gas for waste, gas for steam, didn't mean to break that, liquid for water, and gas for the fissile fuel. So I'm out here a little ways away from the main area, and I've got one final piece of advice for you when building a fission reactor. And that is, they are very volatile if not taken care of. Make sure you keep it cool. Make sure you keep it fed. Otherwise, boom. And the boom comes with a nice radioactive cloud for you. Chernobyl, anyone? So, yeah, don't go building one right next to your buddy's base. Maybe put it on a nice island somewhere, far away from anyone else. But I do think that's gonna do it for this episode, as we took a look at the fission reactor for Mekanism version 10. Now this is only available in 1.16.1, and according to Aiden, they have no plans of backdating this to other versions of Minecraft. So if you want to play with the fission reactor, you're gonna need to get into 1.16.1. I sure do appreciate everybody coming to hang out with me, as always, and until next time, y'all get out there, make some noise. See ya.